Hey there, welcome to the Awakened Pilgrim. My name is Mark. Hope you're doing well. Hope you've had a good day so far and I find you in good health. My intention is to be totally authentic with you today and basically let you in on the difficulties of this project. I left my job in 2021 in Vancouver and I came down to Mexico to start a community. And this is now a vlog to report on a daily basis. So I hope that it gives you value and that you can see that there are options available. It's a little bit dark here. I don't know if my camera is going to work out though. So sorry about that. So today is a bit of a bigger topic. We are shifting into what feels like mobility, shifting into taking action, and specifically today is really an important day because it gives us an opportunity to recognize that our work, even though things might not be working out, meetings aren't being people aren't pitching up to meetings, or there might be projects that haven't been completed this week, or it's just not enough progress, right, during this week. And that's always something obviously we deal with when we are in the professional world. It's constantly pushing to get progress and improve. But at some point, sometimes you run out of steam. You just kind of can't carry on. And then there's a moment where it just feels like this just can't go on. And then something pops up, and I thought a good story, and I don't know the story in detail, but a good story would be in comparison to the Mormons that moved over from Europe into the States, and they were pioneers. These people that were living under tyrannical environments. There was no rule of law, or at least there was no future for people. And there was a lot of famine and struggling and pestilence. And they decided, might as well leave my homeland and leave my family, my parents maybe, or grandparents, whatever the case, my community that I had. And I'm going to go and seek a better life, right? So my hair is always terrible in this thing. Sorry, I got to sort that out. Anyway, I got to get a haircut. So this is something that, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people basically faced during a period in Europe that was very difficult to, move away from, because you got your family, and then at the same time there's this idea of a better world on the other side of the oceans. But there's a lot of struggle that goes along, knowing that sometimes the ships don't come back, they sink, or knowing that there's a lot of risk involved, right? And I can't imagine how it must have been one of the hardest things, right? To leave your parents and to leave your family and never ever see them again, right? Maybe even your children. And I mean, they did that a lot in our history, where most of the time the men they didn't have access to home life, right? They were out there fighting in Rome time periods. There were soldiers constantly at war, and then that continued for the most part. And even today, we see how many people are, involved in the military complexes, and they're just not with their families, or they dealing with professional positions where they're out at sea, for instance, and they gone for 3 months at a time, and that's a good situation. Sorry, these small mosquitoes are chewing me up a little bit. So I'll have to speed it up a little bit, eh? So, yeah, you're facing individuals that have had to make a choice similar to the way we are now presented with the choice of knowing this system that we are living in, this system of how we've broken our communities, how we've broken our families, how we've become so dependent, making money God, and everything we're doing seems to be solved by money, and it's like, oh, we just can't do it because of no money. And there's this constant issue of trying to build stronger connections, stronger bonds with a genuine intention amongst individuals, because that if there's no money involved, what's the point? What's the value? I think as you get older, you start to realize that there's just a lot of things that money cannot buy. So, and economics doesn't solve everything. It's a monetary system. It's there to reward you when you do good things and punish you when you don't do good things. Let's put it that way. That's what tax is there. So it's based on, you know, behavior control. It's not based on what is the greatest value of a human. It's creativity and production through that, you know, and their own labor, their own craft, right? Look at how few artisans there are, artisanal, you know. It's hard to be an artist nowadays. It's hard to be expressive even with all the control, the sensory controls and so on. So again, we're sitting in a situation where we have to ask ourselves, is this a point where we are going in the wrong direction? Are we going to continue to go into this direction of basically a technocratic shift where we become the robots, we become the machines, which we are in a sense already by losing our souls, by losing our humanity? We become, you know, we the people, not we the humans, we the people, which are just personas, it's just actors, right? Are we getting lost in our act and thinking that is human? And now we're going to continue that as a society based on personas. So this is where, you know, when I was looking at all these things in the world that are taking place, how the system's structured, how it's taken advantage of us, I don't see any good out of it unless you are already on top, unless you're already on the top of, you know, people want to argue you can work your way up to the top. Yeah, sure, and you're alone, right? Like, because how can you get to the top when everybody else, you have to be at the top of something, right? So everybody else is going to be lower than you, and now you're sitting in wealth alone. What is the value of that? Who wants to live a lonely life? There's no meaning for me to have life if I was on an island and I had no connection with other humans, right? The real value of life to me is the connection with humans. But I digress as usual, sorry. The story goes that, you know, you had the Mormons coming, and there was like the 70s, you know, somewhere around there, 80. And they came to North America, and they believed that, you know, it was Brigham Young that had a calling to go start a community. And he only had a couple thousand people in the beginning. And that's still impressive. I mean, probably a couple churches came together and said, we're going to go out, we're going to go do this. And that is the beauty about, you know, religion, and it does unify people in a vision. And so he was able, you know, and after years of like struggling through the wilderness of America, eventually he came, you know, being sick. He was, I believe, in a train or in a ox wagon kind of thing, and he was sick in the back, and he wasn't doing well, and the people were frustrated and they wanted to turn back. But there was one moment where he was lying in this, you know, wagon, and he looked out and he saw Salt Lake, right? He saw this beautiful scenery on top of the mountains, and it just inspired, and he realized at that moment that he was in the right place at the right time. And from then 70,000 other individuals made the same journey. He was the first bushwhacker, right? That's incredible. That is something to show that one divine inspiration, one thought can make such a big difference. And yet today we are now encroached by that same system, right? So nothing's really changed. It's just caught up. We've lost our communities, we've lost our mutual aids, we've lost our ability to look after our own, right? And everything is now, the system gives us these options, right? Instead of real humans that we made connections with and bonds, and instead of becoming old with our friends and our family, now we go to these places, care homes, you know, that we have strangers looking after us. And sure, they care to some degree, but let's face it, there's nothing in comparison to having your children look after you, in comparison to some stranger, helping you out. There's no bigger gift for me as an individual to my parents in looking after them in their age, and doing it in such a way that I'm able to be connecting with them on a humane level, like that we are just human, So that journey of still coming through and breaking the bushwhacking, that's what we're doing here. We're bushwhacking, so it's easier for others. And I'm gonna just lay it out nice and clean right now. What are we really doing here? And it's gonna probably blow your mind. So here is the thing. The world is changing, and we live in a positive law system, and it is based on the justification of being fair, right? To be economical. This is the golden rule. It needs to adjust the system to show that it has been righteous, it's been fair on the public. That's how they are able to justify their rule, in the political sense. Is to say, well, we have tried to make sure that everybody gets represented equally. I can give you an example of how this works. For instance, right now, I'm in a situation where if I go to court and try and fight for my son, what happens is I get seen, because they don't know who I am, they don't know my character, but they'll have their assumptions and presumptions, and they'll assume that I'm a certain type of character because I fall in a certain category of individuals that have left their families behind. They did leave their kids behind, and they just left, right? And there are men that do that. But I didn't do that. I didn't leave my family because I just wanted to find a different life. I was told to leave because they believed that I did something which I didn't do. And that was sleep with someone else, sleep with my neighbor. And I never slept with my neighbor. So this is like the judgment that will be placed on me. And if I go to court, they will use all the characteristics of these kind of men that do this onto me. They'll place that onto me, that assumption onto me. And I would have to go into court and really argue that I'm not that. But every guy does that. So you fall into the same trap. Going to court, I'm just going to lose that battle. So this is the justification of the system, is to look at, it's the same as affirmative action. Going from South Africa, the companies, they were all white. There was something, it's not fair. The way the South Africa was running their corporations, the way they're running the government and suppressing the Indigenous, that is not right. And so what did they do to solve that? They said, okay, from now on, everybody that's working in a company, 70% or 60% have to be of Indigenous kind of character, right? And so 70% of people were fired. And my parents were one of them. And that's the reason why we went to Canada. That's how that gets solved. It's not an intimate thing. It's not personal. It's not individual. You just get thrown in with a whole bunch of other people, and it's assumed that you're like that. And so the system at the moment recognizes that it has also not only done that in South Africa, not only done it in Canada and the States and many other parts of the world, which they actually spurred on, going back again, the 1700s, right? So the 1900s, they spurred that on. They pushed that, the colonialization, the suppression of the Indigenous. Now we're at a state in humanity where it's recognized that that was wrong. The way that was done was wrong. It's not going to lead us into collaboration and harmony. So the system is requiring a balance again. And how is that system going to solve that problem? Well, UNDRIP, okay? United Nations have come out, and this is only in the last 10 years or so, with a identity for individuals to be stateless. In other words, you don't have to be part of any country, and you can assume that, and you'll be indigenous, and under that indigenous right, you have a separation. You are separate from the state, but you have a sovereignty within the community you live. That is what's happening right now. In fact, a good example of that would be in Canada, where recently Vancouver and many parts of Canada have been given over to Indigenous communities. Why? Because it absolves them from the debt. It absolves them from the responsibility of having to pay back all the debts. Okay, so that is taking place right now, while our governments are taking action using this mechanism, this tool, to get away from their obligations. Right? To say, well, we're not responsible anymore. It's now the Indigenous. It's back on their side, right? We hit the ball back on them. It's theirs to do what they want to do with now. They inheriting the debts, right? Likewise, we can do that on an individual basis. So I know a lot of people argue that we legally have to claim our straw man, claim our ficta persona, and then we have to claim the right to actually be the executor of it, and there are many facets to this process. I don't believe that works, because it's too removed. That concept's too removed. You can play that game of sovereignty. You can go in and say, I'm a sovereign, but it's not going to work. Okay, if you are riding on Roman roads with Roman certificates and you're a Roman. Okay, using the Gregorian calendar, you're a Roman, right? So you're not indigenous, you're not separate. You can say all you want to be about you being sovereign. It's not going to make a difference. Okay. This, on the other hand, is the only option that we have as humans, right? Is to claim our humanity. Is to say we're not personas, we're not actors. We are actually real entities, and we are human, and we have divine rights. And we claiming them back. The right to we have the right to the freedom of speech, right? Like, these are actually constitutional basis, but what they've done is they perverted those rules so that they can twist the meanings of them. When we go back to human rights, we're talking about I have the right to eat, I have the right to look after the land, to provide food for myself and my family. I have the right to move, right? I have the right to choose on my beliefs and my practices, my rituals. Those are my rights. The way I want to live my life is my right. The only catch is I cannot do it in their structure. I have to remove myself. And that's why this project is focused on providing that path, right? We are bushwhacking that path so that others can come, and ultimately you can move away from a state identification, and you can move into a indigenous identification, which will give you these rights back. There is a sacrifice. You cannot then go back into the system as an indigenous, right? Unless you've got the protection of someone in that system. So, and that might be a sovereign, right, in the system. And that's usually going to be someone that's wealthy. They're going to protect you. They're going to provide you with the ability for travel. They're going to provide you with their name for doing business and transaction. Everything gets done under their control in the system. But when you move back into the indigenous environment, that goes. That none of those rules apply to you. And so that also applies to your children. They cannot just take your kids. They cannot just come in and enforce rules in indigenous property. It gives you way more sovereignty than any paper would, and this is now recognized internationally. So that's the crux of what we're doing here, and I'll be repeating this over because it seems that there is this idea that it's just a matter of time before individuals like myself and so on we will just succumb. And I'm telling you, no, it's the real reality is that the governments are failing. They've got too much debt. They're looking at ways to get out of it, and they are using this transference process in their advantage to not have to pay for the debts. Okay, you can do the same thing that your government's doing. So that's what we're doing here, and we are bushwhacking, just like Brigham Young, that was bushwhacking through, to Salt Lake City, right? So today's energy, which resonates with me today, is really about holding out to that vision, that one moment where even though nothing in the project has been, completed, or the process feels like nothing's happened, or, really how long is this torment going to go on? And the beautiful thing is, we can see little glimpses that one vision of Salt Lake City is a confirmation, and it's got to do with the divine law, the divine timing, not Cronus, not Roman law, not sun worshipping law and time. Okay, so yeah, I'm very passionate about this today. So thank you for your tolerance, and thank you for sticking in there. What is going on? That's my message for today. For hope and letting you know there is a path, and we are busy on it. Come join us. Right there, I will leave a link in the bottom for our Pioneer program. There's so many benefits you can receive from this by getting involved right in the beginning. I really think you can't get any better deal than this from a community, and it's only because we have the spots available right now. Those spots are going to be taken very quickly when they do. Might take a year or two, but when they filled up, they're filled up, and then you have to go find another community, because we're only going to limit ourselves to a certain amount of people here. So that's already happening, and if you're not starting to move on this, if you're not starting to prepare for this, you're going to miss the opportunity. Okay, so other than that, what's going on with the project today? Well, the pools are somewhat empty, but we are stuck with a broken pump, a small broken pump, and we did send it in for taking a look at, but they said it's going to cost too much to repair, so I'm going to take a look at it when I get the pump back, hopefully today or tomorrow. And then I was looking at we have an issue. We have another base camp. So this is base camp 1, and we got base camp 2, and we need a communication between these two camps. But the other one's about 7 kilometers away. I've got actually a DRM radio system, which is, these like little walkie-talkies, but this is not little ones. These ones are able to go 20 kilometers. The problem is, and this is one of those things, is that I cannot use it without, let's say, triggering some kind of alert, because I need a license to use it. And I don't know if you've ever looked into this. Very interesting, like the process of getting a license, radio license to use. I just want to communicate, with someone about 7 kilometers away, and now I've got to go through this whole process. It's a very slow, detailed, I want to say nepotistic kind of environment, right? Like where you have to, if they don't like you, if the radio station or group doesn't like you, you can't get your license easily, okay? And they are gatekeepers. They almost prevent people from being able to use these tools. The good news is, though, when there is no power and there's no other means, you are allowed to use it. So the classic thing, though, is that you need to blend in. So it's not about getting your license. It's about knowing how the communication system works and using it appropriately. And that means kind of using it in the traditional sense of how they communicate with each other through the radios. So there is training required, but you don't need to have certification. Honestly, like if you're in a situation where there is no electricity and it's an emergency, you can use those radios. So, and that's really when we need them. So I'll be setting them up, but we have a lot of vegetation between our locations, and we'll need quite long antennas for it to actually work, to transmute to that level. So that's the situation on our communications at the moment. The good thing is we have the equipment. We just need to kind of get some wire to put the antennas in, and then only use it when it's allowed. Let's put it that way. Besides that, I've been focusing on EcoHubs.community and looking at the recourse system, which is very impressive. It's a blueprint for communities to have an established structure. I am still learning more about the details. I'm sure there's probably a lot of assumptions that have been pushed in there, but that's what I'm working on today. And we are also then working on a presentation for some founders, right? So that's the next thing we're looking at. So with that, what else? I don't think there was anything else on the list today. I wish you the best. I hope you have a wonderful day. Lots of love. God bless. Hey there, before you go, thank you again for your time. I just wanted to make an offer for this course. It really helped me as an individual find passion, get my passion together and be on this journey. It's free for 2 weeks. You can go take a look at the materials and find the support. The link is in the description below. Thank you.